The sky above Moonvira was always quiet blue, and silver swirling like water under glass. The Galactic Academy stood tall on the mountains, surrounded by open plains and soft wind. This was the most respected school in the galaxy, only the best students. From every planet came. Harit was the start of the survival test. This test was not just for grades. It was for honor, pride, and future missions. Every year, the Academy chose a new place for the test. This time, the location was different. It was Earthmost. Aliens had only read about Earth in their textbooks: old planet, green trees, rivers, soil, rocks, rain. And when no tech, no supplies, no scanners, no helpers, just natural from. The landing deck students lined up in groups of 6. Each team had a mix of species. Some were small and furry, others tall and glowing, some floated while others had claws. The test was designed this way to teach teamwork between species. Some groups stood quietly at the side, waiting for their turn. They had 2 humans, 1 girl, and 1 boy. The girl's name was Mira. Her hair was tied back in a short braid. Her eyes were calm but sharp. She looked at the map on her wristband, which would deactivate once they landed. Beside her was Tarn, a tall, strong human boy with rolled sleeves and calloused hands. He smiled to himself as he stretched his arms and looked at the other students around him, for aliens in their group were already nervous. Tash was a Villari, feathered and quick-eyed, his wings folded behind his back as he whispered into a small stone for last-minute information. Grim was a Sulari, tall and made of crystal. His body glowed faintly with soft light as he ran calculations through the small storage cube. He had memorized everything. Was short with green fur and 3 legs. He looked around quickly, worried about everything. Even before the test, Began Lulo was thin and long-necked from the planet Eska. She stood very still, blinking slowly. Her voice had not been heard yet. A robotic voice called out from the platform, "Team 7, prepare for drop in 30 seconds. Everyone check their pockets for the small survival kit. Only 1 rope, 1 stone blade, and 1 coil of vine per person. No metal, no weapons." Grim looked at Mira and asked politely, "Do you have a plan already?" "I am happy to share my calculations of the terrain and resource density." Mira simply nodded and said, "Let's just see the place first." Tarn chuckled. "I think it'll be fun." Veen blinked nervously. "Fun? This is survival. We could be eaten, lost, starved, or worse." Tarn gave him a friendly pat. "You'll be fine. We're with you." Before anyone could speak more, the platform under them lit up with soft blue light in one flash. The group disappeared from the academy, reappeared in the middle of a forest. Trees stood tall, and thick green moss covered the rocks. The air was fresh but cool. Birds chirped in the distance. Wind moved through the leaves softly. There was no road, no shelter, and no sign of any other team. They had landed in a shallow clearing surrounded by tall trees and soft hills. Veen took one look and fell over in panic. "This is wild forest, real wild. We need protection now. We need to build defense walls and food stations." Tash flapped his wings once and said, "I'll scan the skies for landmarks." He jumped up and flew over the trees for a few seconds, then landed back, shaking his head. Nothing visible, no rivers, closed, no caves nearby. Grem sat on a flat rock and began writing in the dirt with his finger. "I will map the sun's direction and calculate ideal shelter angle for warmth and light. We can build a triangle frame using vines from the northeast side." Lulo simply looked at the trees and said quietly, "The leaves speak of rain tonight." Everyone turned to Mira, who had picked up a stick and was drawing something in the soil. It looked like a half circle built into a hill. "What's that?" asked Tash. "A house." Mira replied. "A house." Veen squeaked. "We don't have time for a house. We need fast cover." Tarn stepped beside her, carrying 2 branches already cut. "We build fast if we work smart. Just trust us." The aliens looked at each other, uncertain. They had trained with humans, but never in this way. Mira and Tarn didn't check the weather or measure the angles. They walked over to a nearby hill and began to dig with their hands and stone tools. Veen followed them, panicked. Wait. Where is the plan? Where is the drawing? Where is the math?" Tarn smiled without stopping. "It's all in our head. We'll show you how." The other aliens stayed behind. Still unsure, Grim tried to build a small triangle shelter using vines, but the frame broke after 10 minutes. Tash collected sticks but didn't know how to tie them right. Lulo picked leaves and tried weaving them for roof cover, but they blew away in the windy mid-afternoon. The group had no progress, no food, no shelter, no fire, but Mira and Tarn worked fast. They had dug into the soft hill and shaped an entrance, reinforced it with wood, placed flat stones for the floor, used moss as padding, bamboo for air holes, and bark as roof lining. Be sunset. A round door stood at the hill's base. Smoke rose from a hidden chimney. Firelight flickered from inside of other for stood shocked as the humans waved from the doorway. "You all done yet?" Tarn asked with a grin. The aliens walked forward slowly, eyes wide. Inside was dry and warm, shelves carved from logs, a fire pit with stones, a raised bed of leaves to wooden stools, even a small wooden fork. Tash stepped inside, looking round with open wings. "You build a home, a real home, in 3 hours." Mira nodded and said, "Why suffer when you can build something nice?" Veen sat near the fire in silence, not sure what to say. The sky turned dark, the forest grew cold. But inside the hill, the team sat together, sharing roasted roots and laughing softly in the middle of wild earth, while other teams struggled and shivered at them. 7 had found comfort, and it had started with 2 human hands and an idea. The sun rose slowly over the forest. The early morning light passed through the tall trees and danced on the green moss. Birds began to sing and the wind moved gently through the leaves. Inside the hill home, the 6 students were already awake. The fire had burned all night, keeping the place warm. Mira and Tarn were sitting near the small wooden table. They were sharing roasted root pieces while carving new tools. Stash stretched his wings and looked around. He still could not believe what he saw. The walls were smooth, the air was dry, and the roof did not leak a single drop of water. During the night, Grem the Sulari had not spoken much since last evening. He stood near the doorway, now holding a flat stone and writing numbers across it with a small stick. "I have recalculated," Grem said finally. "This construction speed is 24 times faster than expected. No use of metal, no power tools, only rope, stone, and vine." Veen sat quietly near the fire, looking at the glowing embers. He had stopped shaking, but still looked unsure. "Maybe we are already behind," Veen said. "Other teams will think we had help from outside." Tarn smiled while tying a knot in a rope. "No help, just 2 hands and a bit of teamwork, that's all." Lula walked outside and looked at the sky. She spoke softly, "Clouds are gathering. There may be rain again by afternoon." Tash followed her outside and flew up into the trees. He returned quickly with a worried face to teams nearby. "Their camps look weak. One tent is broken. I saw one of them trying to fix it with wet leaves." Mira stood up and picked up her pack. "We should go help." Grem looked up from his stone. "Help? They are not on our team." Mira looked at him and said calmly, "Does not matter. A problem is still a problem. If we can solve it, we solve it. That's what humans do." Tarn laughed and added, "Besides, we already have a house. We have time to spare." The group packed a few tools and walked through the forest, guided by Tash, who flew above. After 20 minutes, they reached a small clearing where another group of students were struggling. Goni, student with orange skin and glowing hands, was trying to tie wet cloth between 2 trees. It kept falling down. A tall student with long arms was shaking a food pod, hoping something would fall out. 2 others sat under a broken tarp, soaked from last night's rain. When they saw Mira and the others, they stood up quickly, unsure if this was help or trouble. Tarn raised a hand in peace. "We came to help. We brought rope, dry bark, and a better idea." At first the team said nothing, then one of them, a silver-eyed girl, nodded. "We will take help, but we must finish fast. The inspectors may come any time." Mira walked to the broken shelter and examined it. She pointed to the trees and began giving simple instructions. "We build a frame first, strong one, then layer bark like scales, overlap it so rain runs down, not in." Tarn tied a rope between 2 trees, then bent a few branches into a curve. Mira showed the others how to weave leaves into strong walls. Using a cross pattern, Evan Veen joined in showing the best way to pin bark with short sticks. Lulo placed stones around the fire to reflect heat and keep smoke low. Within 1 hour, the camp looked completely different. The shelter was strong and dry. The fire was hot and clean. Smoke rose gently, and even the food was now stored off the ground. Using a vine net, other teams stood in silence, looking at what had changed. They had trained for months on theory, yet could not do this in one night. "You made this look easy," said one of the students. Tarn smiled and picked up his small axe-shaped stone. "It is easy if you trust the forest and trust your hands." Back at the Hobbit house, the team returned before sunset. Grem was still thinking. He looked at the bamboo water channel Mira had built to carry clean water from the nearby stream. It was held together with pressure, and Vine not a single. Nail sat near her and asked a question that had been in his mind since yesterday. How did you learn this? Did your people train like builders or engineers? Mira was sharpening a stick into a spoon. She looked up and replied, no formal training. My grandfather used to take me camping every winter. He taught me how to listen to trees and how to build with them, not against them. Tash listened from the corner. You mean this is from memory, not machine code? Tarn was now working on a stone oven near the wall. He added, memory and experience. Our ancestors did this for thousands of years. Before cities, before ships, before power, they used hands and fire. And Patience Veen finally smiled a little. I think I understand now. This test is not about just surviving. It is about building something better than fear. That night they cooked roots and tubers inside the small stone oven. It made the air smell sweet and warm. The group sat together telling stories, not about war or glory, but about old Earth, family recipes, strange bugs, and silly camping accidents. Lou spoke more than before. She told a quiet story of her home planet. Warehouses were built in the shape of floating shells. Tarn asked her to sketch it in the dirt. Mira said maybe they could try building it tomorrow just for fun. Outside the wind grew stronger, but inside the hill it was calm. The small wooden door held firm. The fire kept burning softly. The forest howled but could not touch them from the shadows. Nearby, a small flying inspection drone paused outside the hobbit house, scanning from a distance. It made no noise and left no trace. Sight hovered for a moment, then floated away into the trees. Inside, the team laughed again when Veen burned his fingers trying to grab a hot pebble from the oven. He dipped them in cool water and said, next time I will wait. Tarn grinned. Lesson learned. That's what this test is really about. The next morning the forest was quiet. The sky was still gray from the night rain, but the sun peeked through the clouds in small golden beams. The grass was wet, but the air felt fresh inside the hill house. Everyone was waking up slowly. Mira stirred the fire back to life while Tarn yawned and added dry bark. They had slept peacefully all night. The fire never went out. The roof did not leak. Not a single insect bothered them. Veen stretched and looked around. His eyes were wide as he sat up on the bed of leaves. I still cannot believe this is real. This place feels like a home, not a shelter. Not a test. Tash nodded as he folded his blanket neatly. This is beyond survival. This is comfort. This is design and planning from instinct, not just logic. Grem walked to the corner where the small water channel still flowed clean water into a wooden bowl. He bent down and observed the bamboo pipe. It was tied with vine and small wooden pegs, yet it had not moved or cracked. I have now studied this structure for 2 nights, and today's I still find it efficient and simple. No errors in its shape or use. It delivers water without any tool or pressure system. Lulo stepped out of the doorway and looked around. The rain had passed, but the wind still carried the smell of wet leaves and earth. She stood silently for a moment, then said, there's life nearby. I hear animals, small ones, but close. Mira joined her outside and nodded. We should build a food garden, use roots and seeds from nearby, maybe a trap line too, if allowed by rules. Tarn grinned and said, also I want to build a small smoke oven today. If we dry roots, we can keep them longer. Maybe help more teams. They all agreed. It was clear now that the human students were not thinking like competitors. They were thinking like builders, like problem solvers, like neighbors. While other groups still argued over shelters or sat under plastic sheets, Mira and Tarn had made something that changed the meaning of the test. Litter that morning, to other teams visited the hobbit house. They were surprised to find it built into the hill with a round wooden door and smooth stone steps. Leading Anoni of the visitors, a tall insect-like student from planet Threll, touched the door with careful fingers. You build this by hand. This design is strange yet beautiful. What is it based on? Mira answered while placing more stones around the new fire pit outside. It is inspired by an old Earth story, a place called the Shire, homes built into the hills where peace was more important than power. The insect student blinked slowly. You built fiction into reality that is rare among tested species. Most only build what is needed, not what brings joy inside. The house. Veen showed the visitors the carved shelves, the bed frames, and the small stone chimney. We also have fire control. It does not smoke up the inside room. Mira shaped the chimney Using flat rocks, it pulls the air upward and the wind carries it away. The visitors looked impressed, but also confused. One of them asked why build so much. This is only a 3-day test. You already passed the shelter part on the first day, Tarn replied. While lifting a log for the smoke oven, it is not about passing, it is about learning. If we can do more, we should do more. That is the point of being part of something bigger. By afternoon, the visitors left with new ideas and sketches. One of them even took a piece of bark Mira had folded into a water scoop. After lunch, the team started building the smoke oven. Tarn dug a shallow pit near the house. Mira placed stones around it and layered wet leaves above. The others brought small logs and cut them into flat panels using sharp stone tools. It took less than 2 hours for the oven to be ready. Tarn placed sliced root vegetables on a wooden grill inside and lit a small fire under the wet leaves. Smoke began to rise gently, but stayed under the leaf roof. This would dry the food slowly and preserve it. Grim watched carefully and made new notes. This method could be shared with forest zones. On my home world, it is not only simple, it is beautiful. At the edge of the forest, a soft whirring sound passed by. Again, a small inspection drone floated behind the trees, recording and scanning quietly. It paused when Tarn opened a side panel of the oven and released more smoke. The machine hovered for a moment, then moved away again. Inside the house, Lula was weaving baskets using thin branches. Mira had shown her how to bend the twigs and lock them in place using small cuts. These can carry food or even small stones. I will teach this to the next group that visits. That night, the team sat together under the stars. The clouds had cleared. The moonlight touched the leaves softly, and the forest glowed in silver and green. The hobbit house behind them looked peaceful. Smoke curled from the chimney. The door was slightly open, and warm firelight flickered from inside. Turned passed around pieces of smoked root. Everyone tasted it slowly. This is good, said Tash. Better than anything we had during training. Food drops. Mira leaned back against a log and said, that is because it was made with care, not just for survival, but for each other. Veen looked at the stars and whispered, before this I feared the forest. Now I feel part of it. I never thought a test would teach me that. Grem added, we were sent here to survive, but we are learning to live. That is a stronger lesson than numbers and scores. Lulo nodded and said softly, this place is not a shelter. It is a message. It says welcome. It says we are not afraid of the wild. From far above the Academy station orbiting Earth, watched the data reports from the drones. Their screens showed images of firewood, neat rooms, hand-woven baskets, and smoke ovens built without machines. An instructor said these humans did not just pass the test. They changed it. Back on the forest floor, the students returned to the house one by one. They placed their tools near the wall, washed their hands in the bamboo water bowl, and sat by the fire again. Outside, the wind blew gently, and the forest watched quietly. And inside the hobbit house, 6 students from 6 worlds sat together, safe, warm, and smiling. The third day began with a red and golden sunrise. A soft breeze moved through the trees, carrying the smell of earth and flowers. Birds sang in the distance, and small animals moved in the bushes. Inside the hobbit house, the team was already awake. Mira was boiling water in a stone bowl using hot rocks. Tarn was checking the smoke oven. The dried roots were ready and packed in a basket. Lulo was folding leaf wraps, while Tash sharpened wooden stakes. Veen stood near the doorway, stretching his arms. He looked outside with new eyes. The forest no longer scared him. It felt like home. Nogrim sat near the fire, writing symbols on a smooth bark sheet. I will name this structure Type 1 Forest Shelter. The design uses only natural material, yet it meets comfort standards of most advanced species. Mira smiled as she poured warm water into small cups made from bark. Call it what you want. We just call it the Hobbit House. Tash laughed and said, it is more than shelter now. It is a center. Students from other teams came again yesterday. Some even took notes and asked for help. Just then they heard voices nearby. The students from another team arrived. One was tall and had glowing skin. The other had short arms and wide feet. They looked tired and wet. Our camp was hit by wind last night. The shelter collapsed. Our food fell into the stream. Can you help us build again? Tarn stood up and nodded. Of course, come with us. We'll help you get started. Mira picked up her toolkit made of stone rope and wooden pins. She added, this time we teach you how to build with your own hands, not just fix things for you. The team followed the visitors through the forest. After a short walk, they reached the damaged camp. It was a mess. Torn fabric, broken branches, and muddy supplies were scattered everywhere. Ellie walked slowly around the space. She touched the tree trunks, then looked at the ground to open wind passes straight through. We need to move the camp near the rocks over there. They can block the wind from one side. Tash pointed to a tree with strong roots. This tree can be a main post. Tie the frame here. Make a curved roof with double layers of bark. Mira gave the students a short lesson on tying knots using vines. She showed them how to bend branches without breaking them, and how to place stones to support corners. Starn dug a shallow hole for fire, while Veen collected dry moss and twigs. By mid-morning, the new shelter was already standing strong. The students who had come for help looked at it with wide eyes. We tried to build the same shelter 2 days ago. It broke in the wind, but this one feels safe. Grem smiled and said that is because now you understand shape, weight, and placement, not just copy, but think. The students thanked them and promised to share the knowledge with their team. When the group returned to the Hobbit house, they found two more teams waiting outside. One of them had a small injury. A girl with scales on her arms had a swollen ankle. Tarn helped her sit on a flat rock, while Mira gently touched her foot. No broken bones, just twisted. We can wrap it tight with bark strips and let you rest. Veen brought cool water and a wet cloth. Lulo prepared a leaf mat for her to lie down. Tash looked at the other students and asked, "Where's your medic kit?" The students looked down in silence. We lost it when our camp was hit by falling trees. We ran without taking supplies. Grem looked at Mira and said, "More teams will come. They are looking for help, not just food. They come here because they know this place is safe." Mira nodded slowly. "We will help, but we also teach. No one leaves without learning something." They began creating a small teaching zone outside the Hobbit house. Tarn built a wooden board from flat logs. Mira used charcoal to draw shapes and steps on it. They call it the forest lesson wall. Lulo wrote with a stick on the ground simple instructions for fire making. Grem explained how to use slope for water drainage, and Tash showed how to make windproof walls with bark layering. By the afternoon, 3 more groups had come. Some brought food to share. Others offered to help collect wood or dig. Helest Hobbit house was no longer just a shelter. It had become a center of ideas and cooperation. While Mira was showing a young student how to make a spoon from wood, a small forest creature wandered near the house. It was small with brown fur and shiny black eyes. It limped as it walked, dragging one leg. Veen noticed it first look. "It is injured." Tarn slowly approached the animal and knelt down. The creature looked at him, but did not run. "It is not wild in a bad way. It is afraid, but not dangerous." He lifted it gently and brought it to the fire. Mira washed its leg and wrapped it in a clean leaf. With soft moss, the creature rested near the fire without fear. The visiting students watched in surprise. "You help even forest animals. Is this part of the test?" Mira shook her head. "No, this is part of being human. We help where help is needed. No question, no reward expected." One of the visiting students whispered to her friend, "Now I understand why humans are called the builders among stars." That evening, the Hobbit house was full of quiet sounds. Students sat outside learning, tying, carving, weaving, and cooking. Some took turns telling stories. Others helped clean and prepare food. Little forest creatures slept peacefully near Veen, who kept checking its leg and feeding it pieces of dried root. Inside the house, Grem sat beside Tarn. "And Mira, something has changed in this forest. It started with your house, but now the test is becoming something more, a place where all species learn together. Not in a classroom, but with hands and heart." Tarn leaned back and smiled. "Maybe the test was never just about surviving 3 days. Maybe it was about showing what kind of people we are when we face the wild together." Outside, the moon rose high. The forest was no longer silent. It was alive with light and laughter and the soft crackle of fire. In the middle of it all stood a small home built into a hill, place made by human hands, a place that now belonged to many. The stars above the forest were bright that night. The sky was clear and filled with light. The moon looked large and round like a silver coin hanging in the sky. The air was cool but calm. The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the soft sound of rustling leaves. Inside the Hobbit house, Mira was writing on a flat piece of bark. Using charcoal, she was making a list of things the team had built and shared. Since the test began, beside her, Tarn was sharpening a long stick into a digging Tululo was sitting quietly near the fire weaving a new basket. For storing dry seeds, Tash stood near the small doorway watching the trees, while Veen checked on the forest creature resting on a leaf. Maddott's leg had healed a little, and it was now sitting up with curious eyes outside. A few visiting students still sat around a second fire. They were talking softly, eating dried root, and drawing sketches of the smoke oven. Mira had taught them how to build if everything felt peaceful, but then it changed suddenly from the far side of the forest. A loud sound broke the quiet. It was not the wind, not an animal, and not thunder. It was a sharp howl rising high, then falling like a long cry from something large. An angry fire crackled, but no one moved at first. Then the sound came again, louder. This time it echoed between the trees, making birds fly out and small animals run. Students looked at each other with wide eyes. Veen stood up quickly, his voice shaking. That was not normal. That sound does not belong here. Something is wrong. Something big is moving near us. Tash stepped outside and flew up into the trees. He returned fast. I saw something large, shadows, moving through the trees east side near the edge of the river. Too far to see clearly, but they are not students, not forest animals either. Graham looked worried. Could it be a test creature, maybe something released by the academy? For observation, Mira shook her head. No, they told us the forest had no large predators, nothing that size should be here. Tarn picked up a torch made from a wrapped stick and lit it from the fire. We need to know what's out there if it's coming this way. We can't just wait. Several students looked afraid. Some wanted to hide, others whispered about pressing their emergency beacon, but Mira stepped forward. No beacon, we're not hurt, and we're not alone. We stay calm, we use our skills, and protect each other like we've done since day one. She looked at Tarn and nodded. Let's check it out. Tarn grabbed his tool. Mira picked up a small patch tied to her belt. It held dried pepper powder made from forest plants. It could sting eyes and noses if needed. We'll go toward the sound. Stay low, stay quiet. Mira said. Tash also joined. He could fly above and guide them back if needed. The rest stayed behind to guard the house. Lulo kept the fire strong. Graham prepared stones for defense, and Veen sat near the small creature to keep it calm. Three moved through the trees slowly. The light from the torch showed their paths. Shadows danced around them. Leaves rustled under their feet, but they made no sound. With their voices as they moved closer, the strange sound came again, but softer this time. It was not a growl, not a roar. It was more like a painful call. Myra stopped near a tree and held her hand up. She pointed ahead between two large rocks where the bushes had been pushed aside. Something big had passed through recently. The marks were fresh. The ground was broken, and the plants were crushed. Then they saw it near the riverbank. Something lay on the ground. It was large, covered in brown fur, and breathing heavily. Its side was moving up and down fast. One of its legs was caught in a metal trap, a sharp device clearly not made from forest material. Tarn stepped closer. It's hurt, that's what we heard. It's in pain. Tash hovered above and looked around. No other movement. I think it is alone. Mira knelt beside the creature carefully. It looked like a giant forest dog with large eyes and a thick tail. The metal trap had cut into its leg. The blood was fresh, but the creature did not try to attack. It only watched them and made a soft, low sound. This trap is not part of the test, Mira said. This is old, forgotten metal. Could be left from before the forest is still cleaning itself. Tarn broke the trap open using a strong stick and careful hands. The creature cried once, then fell still. Mira placed soft moss over the wound and wrapped it tightly with clean vintage. Looked at them both. We can't leave it here. If other teams come near and get scared, it might get hurt again. Tarn nodded. I'll carry it back. It's not far. Mira looked at the creature and whispered, gently, you're safe now. Come with us. Tarn lifted it carefully. It was heavy, but not too much for his strong arms. The creature rested its head against his shoulder. They returned slowly through the trees back at the house. Everyone was waiting. The other students moved aside to make space. Veen ran forward with new clean leaves for bedding. Lulo helped Mira make a special herb paste for the wound. No one asked if they should help. They just did. If forest was quiet again, the strange sound had stopped. Later that night, the creature slept peacefully near the fire, its leg wrapped and warm. The students sat close together, sharing what they had seen. Grim looked at the trap Mira had brought back. This is dangerous. This forest still holds forgotten things. We must tell others to be careful. Not everything here is part of the test. Tarn nodded. But we also saw something else. We saw what happens When fear is replaced with care, we didn't run, we helped, and now the creature is safe. Mira looked around at the house, at the people, at the tools and baskets. This house is more than wood and stone now. It is a place where fear stops at the door. Everyone was quiet after that. No one felt like sleeping yet. They just sat together, watched the fire, and listened to the soft breath of the forest around them. The stars stayed above, watching like silent teachers, and somewhere in the shadows the inspection drone hovered quietly, recording everything. The night after the strange creature's arrival was calm at first. The stars shone brightly, and the moon lit the forest with a soft, silver glow. The little hobbit house stood peacefully, smoke curling gently from its chimney. The fire crackled and danced, casting warm light on the faces of the students who sat close inside. Mira watched the creature sleeping quietly on a bed of leaves and moss. Its breathing was steady now, and the pain in its legs seemed less. She smiled softly, feeling proud of what they had done. Outside, the forest whispered with the voices of small animals and the rustling of leaves. The students had learned to listen to the forest sounds. They understood when the wind was just the wind and when something else moved nearby. Suddenly, a sharp cry echoed through the trees. The students froze, eyes wide. The sound was close. Closer than before. It was not the creature they had helped. This was something new. Tash flew up to the treetops and looked around. His glowing skin flickered in the moonlight as he searched. "There are more," he said softly, landing beside the others, several shadows moving near the old fallen tree. "They are not forest creatures either." Mira stood up and took a deep breath. "We cannot run again. We face it together, like before." The students gathered tools and sticks, ready to defend their home. The hobbit house was not just a shelter anymore. It was their safe place. From the dark woods, shapes appeared. Tall figures moving silently between the trees. The students watched carefully, waiting to see if the strangers would come closer. Suddenly, one figure stepped forward. It was a student from another team, covered in dark armor that shined even in the moonlight. His eyes looked serious, but not angry. "I'm Kilo," he said in a calm voice. "We come with a warning. The test is changing. The forest is becoming more dangerous. You have helped many, but there are rules now. No more gatherings. No more sharing. The academy wants order." Mira looked at Kilo and shook her head gently. "Order is good, but kindness is better. We do not stop helping. We do not stop learning." Kilo's eyes narrowed. "The academy says your team breaks the rules. Your shelter is too strong. You have too many visitors. This is not the way to survive." Veen stepped forward bravely. "We survive because we work together. We survive because we care. Isn't that what the test should teach?" Kilo's voice grew colder. "That is not the academy's way. You must stop, or you will face consequences." Before anyone could reply, a loud alarm sounded from deep inside the forest. Red lights flashed from the academy station above, shining through the trees like warning signals. Kilo looked around nervously. "I must leave now. The academy is watching." He turned and disappeared quickly into the shadows. The students stood silent for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. Mira sighed and looked at her friends. "We must prepare. The forest is no longer just a test ground. It is a challenge." Tar nodded, gripping his tools tightly. "Then we show them what humans can do. We face the challenge not with fear, but with strength." That night, they worked harder than before. They reinforced the hobbit house walls with more branches and bark. They dug small trenches around the house to slow down any unwanted visitors. They created more fire pits to keep the area bright and warm. Lulo made more baskets and traps to catch small food for later. Tash kept watch from above, flying silently through the treetops. Grem studied the stars and tried to find patterns that might help them predict danger. Slowly, the others from nearby teams joined them. Some brought food, others tools or medicine. The forest was becoming a community again, even as the rules tried to stop it. In the middle of the night, a soft noise came from the woods. The sound of footsteps moving carefully. The students held their breath, ready for anything. But it was only the little creature they had saved. It limped toward the fire and sat beside Veen. Looking up with bright eyes, Mira smiled. "You came back. You are safe." The creature made a small sound, as if to say thank you. The forest seemed to hold its breath with them. The test was no longer simple. It was a battle of will, of spirit, and of heart. As the moon moved across the sky and the night grew colder, the students of the Hobbit house stayed strong together. They had learned that survival was not just about fighting the wild. It was about building hope where there was none. The forest watched and waited. And the story was far from over. The morning sun rose slowly over the forest. The light touched the tops of the trees and moved down to the ground where the Hobbit house stood strong and quiet. The air smelled fresh with dew and new beginnings inside the house. Mira and her team gathered around the fire. They looked tired but determined. They had not slept much after last night's warning and the strange sounds from the forest. But their spirits were high. Veen sat next to the little creature. The animal's leg was healed almost completely now. It moved carefully, but seemed ready to explore again. Lulo brought fresh water from the nearby stream, while Tash flew to check the surrounding area. From above us, suddenly Tash's voice came through the small communicator. "No danger so far. Everything looks calm. The forest is peaceful again." Mira nodded slowly. "We must be ready, though. The Academy is watching, and our time here is almost over." Grim stood up with a serious look. "We have learned a lot in these days. More than any test should teach us." Tarn smiled and said, "Yes, we survived the wild. We helped others. We built something lasting, not just a house, but a home." Mira looked around at the students from many teams who had gathered once again around the Hobbit house. She felt proud of what they had done together, but suddenly the sky changed. The calm blue turned gray as a large ship appeared above the forest. It was sleek and silver, with glowing lights along its edges. It hovered silently as if watching everything below. A voice came from the communicator. Everyone recognized it immediately. It was the Academy commander. "Students, this is a message from the Academy. Your test is complete. Return to the base immediately. Prepare for final evaluation." Mira took a deep breath and looked at her friends. "We are ready. Let's go." The teams gathered their belongings and walked together toward the clearing where the ship would land. The forest seemed to watch silently as they left the Hobbit house behind. As they reached the clearing, the ship lowered a ramp, and the students entered in groups. The lights inside were bright but warm. The walls were smooth and clean. At the center of the ship, a large room waited. The Academy leaders stood there watching with serious faces. The commander spoke first. "You have survived the forest test with results beyond expectations. Your shelter was strong, your teamwork exceptional, your kindness rare among species tested here." Mira stepped forward. "We did more than survive. We learned to help, to share, and to grow together." The commander nodded slowly. "This was your final lesson. The forest was not just a place to survive, but a place to build community, to understand each other, to face fear with courage." He smiled and added, "The Academy will remember your team. Your story will inspire others to be brave and kind." Suddenly the room filled with light, and the students felt warmth spread through their bodies. They looked at each other and smiled, knowing that this test had changed them forever. When the ship landed back on their home planet, the students shared their stories and knowledge. They spoke of the Hobbit house, the healing of the creature, and the power of working together. Myra looked at the forest from the window one last time and whispered, "The forest taught us more than survival. It taught us to be human." And with that, the story of the Hobbit house in the hill became a legend told across many worlds, a tale of courage, kindness, and hope in the wild and of story.